The Windows command prompt has existed for a long time. It's different from PowerShell. It predates PowerShell, and it's still a command line interface, but it works differently, and the two environments are somewhat compatible, but things that work in PowerShell might not work in the command prompt. Most things in the command prompt work in PowerShell, but that's not necessarily the case. This is important because when following the instructions for installing software or configuring services, the instructions might say, run the following in a command prompt. And if you open up a PowerShell prompt, those instructions might not work. So it's important to be able to be familiar with both environments. Now, when I cut my teeth with computers, when I booted up my computer, I was met with the command prompt. Typing commands. If I wanted to launch the Windows graphical user interface, I had to type win, hit enter, and then that would launch the graphical user interface with the windows, the file explorer, all of that good stuff. So me and the command prompt, we go back a long ways. Okay, so in the start menu, we can find the command prompt. If you just type CMD, you'll find the command prompt application, so we can go ahead and start that. So I've gone ahead and I've zoomed in, make the font a little more readable. Here we can use commands like if I run ping 1.1.1.1, that's a server owned by Cloudflare. Pretty good response time. So we could run ping in PowerShell, we could run ping in the command prompt. Those two commands are going to run exactly the same way. So that works just fine. It is possible to change the defaults to change how this works. Quick edit mode is now on by default, so that's good. If you select something and hit enter, it'll put it on your clipboard. Then you can right click in here and it'll paste. Super nice. Right click, pasting works just like in PowerShell. So that's similar. You can customize your command prompt. Like if I select that IP config, if I copy it, I can just come over to my command prompt, right click. I don't have to right click paste, just right clicking does the paste automatically. So IP config, that checks my IP configuration. I can see my private IP address here, which is mirrored on my desktop, the private IPv4 address. So that's good. So we can just practice running. I'm going to copy each one of these commands. So ARP-A, that's going to show me my ARP cache. I'm just going to do Control-C. I've got some stuff in the way. Oops. Didn't yank it. All right. Right click, copy. Come over here. Right click, paste. I can see my ARP cache. Those are different devices that my computer is aware of. Again, right click to copy. Right click and I paste. I can see more with ipconfig/all. I see more information. Netstat is used for evaluating my current network connections. So I can see who my computer is connected to, which it's probably just me. I think that's probably my home IP address. I'm connecting. No, sorry. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's my IP address where I'm connecting from. Yeah, through the remote desktop protocol port 3389. And there's another ping command. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. I'm struggling with my copy and paste. Copy. Right click to paste. I'll ping Google's DNS server. Very fast. 1 millisecond? That's nuts. Very, very fast. They might be, the data centers might be very close there. So one thing to notice, if I run GCI get child item, That's a PowerShell command. So if I run get child item, same thing. The command prompt is like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know PowerShell. So the command prompt does not know PowerShell, but it does have, the command prompt does have access to the same programs that run on your computer, the same that PowerShell has access to the same programs that run on your computer. We just don't have all the PowerShell goodness inside this command prompt. So there's some differences in scripts and things, so we need to be aware of that when we are following instructions. Are we working in PowerShell or are we working in the command prompt? Because we've got these two command line interfaces, that causes some confusion. It actually gets even more complicated because on Windows, you might also be running Linux. So there's a tool called the Windows Subsystem for Linux. So you might actually have a Linux command prompt inside your Windows computer that you want to connect to. Microsoft saw how all these command line interfaces, the number of command line interfaces is increasing. They created a tool called the Windows Terminal, which can access any of these interfaces. It's not installed by default on Windows Server, so at least the version I'm using right now, probably in the future it will be. I'm going to go ahead and pause this video. I'm going to show my host operating system. So here I've got my desktop, and in the start menu, you might have this on your computer depending on what version you're running. If I start terminal, this is unifying all those command line interfaces. When I launch the terminal, this program knows about different types of command line interfaces. So by default, it's going to open up PowerShell. If I hit the plus tab, it'll open up PowerShell again. If I want a different command line interface though, I can hit this down arrow and I can choose what I want. Do I want PowerShell or do I want the command prompt? So I'll choose the command prompt. And like here, if I run get child item, doesn't recognize it. If I switch back to PowerShell, notice my working directory is C users Jim Marquardt. If I come back here, if I run get-child item, it does work. So I do have access to it. So all that's fine. Notice in this drop-down list, I also have access to the Azure Cloud Shell. So if I was a cloud administrator, I could access that. That could be helpful. As you install more software, if you install the Windows Subsystem for Linux and different operating systems, you might have even more options here in the terminal. But we need to make sure that we're accessing the right command line interface to get access to the commands we want.